For what feels like forever, the Middle East has been a chessboard for global superpowers. But then, in late 2024, something snapped. One of the region's most dug-in regimes just collapsed. And that single event triggered a seismic shift, forcing a whole new set of players to step up and completely redraw the map of power. It all started right here, December 2024. After more than a decade of a truly brutal civil war, the Assad regime in Syria finally crumbled. And this wasn't just the end of one conflict. No, this blew a massive hole right in the center of the region, creating this huge power vacuum that threatened to unleash a whole new wave of chaos. The immediate fear was palpable. Analysts were calling it a potential Hobbesian nightmare, a total free-for-all. I mean, with the state gone, who was going to stop the country from just shattering into a million pieces? A battlefield for every armed group and rival neighbor. Something had to be done, and it had to be done fast. So how exactly did the region pull back from the brink? Let's break it down. In this explainer, we're going to dissect this new regional order that was basically forged in fire. We'll look at the three key players who stepped in, each with their own unique strategy. And then we'll see how the new Syrian government is trying to navigate this incredibly dangerous new world. What happened next was, frankly, a fundamental challenge to how security has been handled in the Middle East for generations. With the UN often stuck in gridlock and the US being more selective about its involvement, the region's own heavyweights decided, okay, we have to take control. The old way of doing things was out, a new, more pragmatic and interest-driven approach was in. And this new reality has a name: tripartite stabilization. Now, don't think of this as some formal, happy alliance. It's not. It's a fragile, kind of tense alignment of three major powers, and each one brings a very different tool to the table. Egypt has its diplomatic weight, Saudi Arabia brings the money, and Turkey has the military muscle on the ground. The goal? To stop the whole region from melting down. All right, let's dive into our first major player, Egypt. And its strategy is driven less by grand ambition and more by a desperate need for self-preservation. For Cairo, stabilizing the neighborhood isn't a choice. It's about protecting its own fragile economy. It's about survival. And wow, just look at this chart. This is the why right here. The economic pressure on Cairo has been absolutely immense. Houthi attacks in the Red Sea caused its Suez Canal revenue to just plummet, from over $10 billion down to $4 billion in a single year. A shock like that forces you to throw out the old playbook and get much more hands-on fast. So what does this defensive mediation actually look like on the ground? Well, first, Egypt has become the absolute linchpin of the new international force in Gaza. At the same time, it's backing the Sudanese army to prevent a total state collapse to its south. It's projecting power in Libya. It's even teaming up with Turkey in the Horn of Africa. Every single move is a calculated play to build a buffer zone and protect its own skin. So if Egypt is playing defense, our next player, Saudi Arabia, is playing a whole different game. It's using its greatest asset, that incredible wealth, to play a much more ambitious role. Riyadh isn't just cutting checks anymore. It's using its financial power as a primary tool of diplomacy to build alliances, broker deals, and basically architect a new security landscape that serves its own ambitious goals. And to put this into perspective, just think about this number, $5.4 billion. That's the entire UN peacekeeping budget for 2 years. Saudi Arabia can put multiples of that on the table to fund reconstruction in Syria or back a peace deal. So what does that mean? It means Riyadh can shape the future of the region in a way that traditional diplomacy just can't compete with. And Riyadh is using this power to build a whole new security structure from the ground up. It's creating new defense pacts, like this trilateral deal with Turkey and Pakistan. It's forming a Red Sea alliance with Egypt and Somalia. This is all part of a very deliberate design for a new regional order, one that is way less dependent on security guarantees from the West. And that brings us to our third power, Turkey, which has pretty much mastered the art of armed mediation. Ankara's approach is, let's say, the most muscular of the three. It uses its very real military presence on the ground in places like Syria and Libya to create facts, to change the reality, and then it cashes that in for diplomatic influence at the negotiating table. But this new Syria creates a huge dilemma for Ankara. It's walking a real tightrope. On the one hand, as you can see here, its absolute #1 priority is stopping an autonomous Kurdish region from forming on its border. That means confronting the SDF. But on the other hand, it also wants a stable, unified Syria. So it's in this really complicated spot of trying to support the new government in Damascus while also keeping its own troops in the north. And you can really see Turkey's success when you look at how it has completely reshaped the main diplomatic game for Syria. The old Astana process was all about Russia and Iran. Well, today, Turkey has basically evicted Iran, brought in Arab partners like Iraq and Jordan, and Russia's role has been seriously downgraded. That move alone cements Turkey's status as the top security player in the Levant. Okay, so you're the new government in Syria. You've got these three powerful, sometimes competing giants all over your neighborhood shaping your future. What do? Well, in a word, you get pragmatic. You put ideology aside and you make whatever deals you have to make to survive and start the massive job of rebuilding. This one quote from Syria's new president, Ahmed al-Shara, it tells you everything you need to know. He's openly saying that Egyptian companies get first dibs on rebuilding the country. That's a huge strategic choice. It shows that economic recovery is everything, and he sees Egypt as the #1 partner to get it done. This table just lays out Syria's difficult balancing act perfectly. And what's so fascinating is how the approach changes for each power. It's a prioritized partnership with Egypt for the economy, eager reintegration with Saudi Arabia for money and diplomacy, and then this very careful, cautious coordination with Turkey on security. This isn't just a list, it's a playbook for national survival. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. This new regional order is standing on very shaky ground. The threat of sectarian violence inside Syria is still incredibly real. The competing goals of the US and Russia could easily throw a wrench in the works. And, as we're seeing, totally unpredictable shocks from the outside, like this diplomatic crisis over Somaliland, are already creating new cracks between the three peacekeepers. So, at the end of the day, this tripartite stabilization has, without a doubt, pulled the region back from the brink of a catastrophic all-out war. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey have managed to impose a kind of order. But the big question, the really critical, unanswered question for the Middle East, is whether this transactional, interest-driven peace can actually last, or if it's just a temporary pause before the next storm hits.